to move into a more broad state, back in 2008, I know I was watching an interview where someone asked you what the function of a human being is, and you responded that defining the function of a person dehumanizes them, but taking it to a broader scale, how do you feel that society defines the function of students, defines the function of young place, where they want the young people to go?
That's who you mean by society. If you go to corporate boardrooms, they want young people to be quiet, obedient, disciplined, well-dressed, go into become a stockbroker, make a lot of money, they don't care about anybody else. That's what they want. But that's not society. That may be the most dominant element of society. The ones with political power and economic power. But, is that what your parents want? I doubt it. They want you to become a happy person living a satisfying, fulfilling life, doing something significant in your life. I don't know your parents, that's the norm.
Yeah, well, I'd have to agree.
Does the media portray adolescents as irresponsible?
Out of control, irresponsible. Especially anyone's involved in any kind of activism is considered, has to be portrayed as pretty crazy. Sometimes it's funny to watch. I remember during the period of big demonstrations in Washington, a lot of people would go in buses, say from Boston, so they hire buses and they all go down there. I remember once watching the television description of the demonstrations with my wife, and in Boston, the local station focused on one particular girl who had orange hair and a funny hat, and so on and so forth. And sure enough, the Washington television, when they reported on the buses coming in, they immediately focused on her. That's the idea. Try to show them they're somehow kooky, they can't be serious, they can't be real, they can't have concerns. Try to demean the concerns and marginalize them and make it look as if kids are just playing. Yeah, of course, that's the way you want to live. That's the way the protest against authorities always depicted.
So,
for young people, it's done that.
Do you think that there's a collaboration between like the media and big corporations?
Right.
Do you think that there's possibly a collaboration between media and big corporations to kind of demean young people's political ideologies? Because
it's a little hard to say when you put it that way, because the media are a large corporation.
Yeah, true.
So they can't cooperate with it.
Yeah.
I mean, to some extent they cooperate. They're part of the same large-scale corporate culture. But it's not that different in the academic culture. If you read academic work on students, they describe it the same way. They're part of the same educated, elite, privileged culture. Not everyone, of course, there are exceptions. But it's a very strong tendency. And in the media, it's exaggerated because they are part of the corporate culture, but not connected to it.
Well, we know that history has kind of shown that the top elite, the top 1%, kind of, the one thing it fears is an uprising of the base. You've seen this even in America back with the Jim Crow laws and segregation in the South. How is this evident in classrooms, also tying in with the subject we just covered?
In the United States, it's dramatic. The last roughly 30 years since Reagan, economic concentration of economic power has just skyrocketed. We all know that there's a lot of inequality, but if you look at detail of the inequality, it's mostly coming from the top 1% or the top even 1/10 of 1%. That's where income and wealth has radically concentrated in the years since Reagan. And that's not by accident. That's not because of globalization. It's not because of technology. It's because of specific decisions. The economic power carries with it political power. You may have just read yesterday that they're predicting that the next election campaign spending is going to be $2 billion. And that means if you want to be part of the political system, you have to genuflect before concentrated private power. No other way to get $2 billion. And that's across the board. So with economic concentration comes political power. And political power means decisions in government. And the decisions on things like, say, taxes, corporate governance, regulation, a lot of policies have been designed to enrich and empower a tiny percentage of the population and marginalize everyone else. And it's going on right before our eyes. It's bipartisan. So it takes there was a counterweight to this in the past, the labor movement. The labor movement was the main counterweight to concentrated private power. Working people don't have a lot themselves, but when they band together, they can be a substantial force. So there's been a major effort to destroy the labor movement. Now in the private sector, it's been pretty much destroyed. So private sector unionization, I think, is about 7%. And it's not because workers don't want to be unionized. In fact, the United States is, I think, unique in the industrial world. There's a huge number of working people who want to be unionized. We can't. That's the laws don't designed in such a way that it can't happen. They have not been able to destroy it. A lot of it's illegal. So, for example, Reagan, who hated labor, basically informed the business world that the government's not going to apply the labor laws. And the number of illegal firings for organizations just shot way up in the 80s, more in the 90s, and so on. They haven't been able to touch the public unions yet. The public unions were protected by the labor laws. And now there's a major attack on public unions, try to destroy this last remnant of popular power of some sort that's a counterforce to concentration. It's happening right in front of us. There's a huge campaign to try to blame the fiscal crisis and the economic crisis, and not on Goldman Sachs and Citigroup and J.P. Morgan Chase and their collaborators in the government, the ones who actually did it. They blame it on teachers and on firefighters and police with their high salaries and tremendous pensions and Cadillac health plans. I mean, the amount of lying is, I mean, it would impress Stalin, but you lie often enough and it has an effect. And it's happening right before our eyes. So just things that are going on, a lot of them they're kind of reported, but not in a way which makes sense out of it. So, for example, take, say, the lame duck session of Congress, we just passed. Obama was greatly praised for his bipartisanship. He managed to push through legislation with cooperation from both parties. When you take a look at what he passed through, the main thing was a tax cut. There was one issue in the tax cut, one only. A tax cut for the very wealthy, and that's very wealthy. Like, I'm pretty well off, but I was below the cutoff point. So the tax cut for the very wealthy, that was the only issue. Population was overwhelmingly opposed to it. Obama just gave it away. Didn't even try to maintain it. Didn't try to use the public opposition. At the same, well, that was reported, but at the same time, something else happened. He instituted a tax increase for federal workers. They didn't call it a tax increase. They called it a freeze, which is, do the arithmetic. If you freeze salaries of people in the public sector, that's equivalent to raising their taxes. Okay, just take a look at the fiscal consequences, identical. So we essentially raised taxes on the public sector, and he got support for that in a period of tax cut frenzy, because they were being blamed for the ills that we face, they and their terrible unions, which are getting decent working conditions and offering some opposition to corporate takeover. Now, it's happening right at this minute in the state of Wisconsin. It's pretty dramatic. You know, the same day that the news, February 12th, take a look at the New York Times, big headline on the front page, Mubarak falls. You know, public activism in Egypt overthrew a dictator. Big discussions. Same day, on an inside page, reports what's going on in the state of Wisconsin. The governor